Good morning, good morning, and welcome to another edition of Think and Grow Rich Live. My name is Dr. Peter A. James, and you have just entered the new place where you can begin to shift your mindset and apply your own specialized knowledge. You might say, Peter, where are you going with all this enter new place stuff? But let me read an excerpt from Think and Grow Rich for you. Knowledge will not attract money. Let me say that again. Knowledge by itself will not attract money or any other kind of success unless it is organized and intelligently directed through practical plans of action to the definitive end of accumulating money. Those of you who are thinking about going back to school or thinking about, getting another degree, please know that knowledge by itself will not attract money. You have to do more with it. And we're going to dive on into this chapter 4 of Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich today, which is titled Specialized Knowledge, because sometimes we have a misconception about education. We have a misconception about what we're doing with this degree. We sometimes think that just going to school by itself is the ticket to success. I'm not going to go too deep down this because I'm not alone today, folks. Let me first bring out our distinguished panel of individuals, starting out with the leadership strategist. Good morning, Mr. Galen Bingham. How are you, sir?
Fantastic, fantastic. Always great to be a part of this conversation, especially as it pertains to specialized knowledge. And one of the things that always intrigues me is how insights can be hiding in plain sight. Because the actual name of this title, although we're going to be focused on specialized knowledge, the actual chapter title, principal title is Specialized Knowledge, Personal Experiences or Observations. So, very often we overlook the impact of our personal experiences, our personal observations, how we see the world, and how you can turn that, you can monetize that, but you can turn that into something that the world is looking for because the world doesn't need any more answers. We've got all the answers we've got all the answers we need. There's nothing new under the sun. But my spin on things might be just what someone is needing to hear. Your spin on things, Luis, the way that he communicates might be just the thing that people need to hear in order to turn into, or to your point, to shift their mindset. So I can't wait to get into this conversation, not only with all of you, but with our guests as well.
Oh, we got a special guest today there, Galen, that is also going to provide some of those observations that you've described. We'll bring her out in just a short while. Louise, good morning to you, sir. How are things doing with you, my friend?
Hey, Peter, good morning to everybody. Galen, good morning. Uh, Everything is great. Life is great. Enjoying this Eastern weekend
Yeah.
with the family and doing great things. And it makes you think, right? These
It,
weekends, these kind of dates makes you get you go inside and take inside trips into your mind and your spirit. No, definitely it is. This is one of my favorite chapters. Absolutely. This one with auto suggestion and it's one of my favorite chapters. It's how can we, with your God-given gifts, make life better, not just for you, but the
Mhm.
best part is to make life better for someone else. That's to me truly the way how the world gets better.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Louis, I'm with you on the reflection for sure. I think we need to do more of that sometimes. Take a step back, reflect in ourselves, ask ourselves what we need to do, where we need to go, how we need to think differently. I'm excited to dive on into this conversation today with our guest. Let me provide the lead in. Let me roll out the red carpet for our guest today, if I could. Dr. Genie Snyder, CSP, loves to hear from others about their experiences before she even creates one for her audiences. She's all about the geniuses of others. At the intersection with audiences, she knows as speaking professionals, we want to enter the express lane to connect, whether with one coaching client or thousands from the stage. Jeannie wants what Ann McNeil talks about in Think and Grow Rich on specialized knowledge. How convenient. Jeannie knows how to speak the language of her specialized knowledge through curating it for her audiences. She is the immediate past president of the National Speakers Association of Georgia, the NSA. So she understands what's behind the curtain and looks at each event from the seats before she takes the stage. Jeannie is an energetic MC, a keynote speaker, event host, and an executive coach with 25 plus years in the speaking and event industries across the states and global cameos in India, Europe, and Canada. She knows audiences well. She also knows the most vital success element after the vapor clears on any planning and prep backstage is the connection with the audience overall. The three wishes for us today, folks, are this: are finding connection, elevating interaction, and getting traction with our audiences for our businesses. She likes to keep people on edge of their seats and gets them out of their seats on a regular basis. So that's why she's invited today, folks. Let's dive on in and welcome Dr. Genie Snyder, CSB, to the Think and Grow Rich Live Mastermind. Genie, good morning to you today. How are you
Thank you,
doing?
gentlemen. I'm great. Thank you so much. And I'm excited. I'm excited to be with all of you and, of course, and vicariously. So I am thrilled to be on this show. It's taken a minute to get here, and I'm just so excited. Thank
We are
you.
we are so excited to have you today. Jeannie, let's start out. Give us the 30,000-foot view of who Jeannie is, where you've come from, how you've become the success that you are today. What has that journey looked like for you?
It's always hard to answer that question,
Right.
Peter, because am I the success today?
You are, you
And I
are.
think that's a lot of what we think about when we read and reread and reread Think and Grow Rich, because it is that subconscious mind that gets us. And yet, in the same breath, we're also saying, how do we move with our connect that intersection of faith and work um, and how we think about growing our success. It's funny because I don't use the word success a lot, probably. And so it's a nice question to pose at the beginning as we reframe, retrain, rethink how it is that we are looking at what it is we're doing, especially thinking about specialized knowledge today. So I would say it's interesting because when you were introducing the topic today, or the area that we're focused on today, it is about observations and how we bring that awareness by observing others. And I would say my success is definitely linked to the success of others, because that is where I get my joy. That's where I get my energy. That's where I get my knowledge, is from connections with others and finding out how uh, their knowledge, their experiences, and their genius is my terminology,
Right.
connects with mine.
But the audience wants to know how you've gotten here as well. So tell us about Jeannie, what she's good at, how she became good at it, where you're from, all that kind of good stuff that we're
Gotcha.
curious to know also, because they may want to work with you moving forward.
I love that, and I love to work with people that sometimes you connect with people that you've known, and they're like, I didn't know you did that,
Mhm.
and with new people. So the background on the Genie story is we'll start with I was born in North Carolina, and just outside Durham, and so I began there, moved to Georgia when I was a little girl, and have lived mostly in Georgia most of my life, different areas. Background is I thought I was going to be a teacher. I thought I was going to be a nurse until I found out what you had to do with bedpans, literally. And I said, wait, Mom, I have to do that. She said, yes. I said, okay, I'm out. So my career choices, I thought about them early on. And it's funny, when you said, when we talk about the stories that come up for me as a speaker and MC, we are always bringing up stories, and I may have, I'll have notes written, and that's not the story I tell, because it's something that kind of clicks a thought. And I remember very vividly, I was 6 years old, and my parents said, we're moving from North Carolina.
Mhm.
Dad's got a new job. Mom said, I'm going to be doing something different. They sat us down. I remember they sat my brother and me down and said, we're moving to Georgia. Well, we might as well have been moving to Alaska. I didn't know, except my grandparents lived in Georgia. And they said it's near grandparents. So it might be not in their town, but, near. And I listened and I didn't really say much. The next day, I made my entire plan. I went to my best friend's mother and said, my family is moving to Georgia and I'd like to live with you because I don't think I used the word network then, but I have my friends already established here. I was 6. And I said, I have my friends established here and I'd like to stay and live with you. Well, of course, her mother said, sure. And so I went back and presented the plan to my parents that my network was in North Carolina, but that they could come visit and had the whole thing. So I would say the story of Genie is that network and connections of people. And then I'll fast forward to I got married a little later. Now, one of the things I'd done a lot of events and watched lots of other people get married and helped them with theirs. And when I got to my wedding, I looked around. I'm a professional speaker. And my husband handed me the mic. I knew he was going to do a talk, and he handed me the mic. I thought, in all of this planning, I forgot that I probably need to speak at a reception. And I looked around that room and I said, I think this is the first time all my weird groups of people have been in the same room. Because people always go, how do you know her? How do you know them? Oh, Jeannie. So that connection, I think, is a big part of my story. It's a big part of my specialized knowledge. And it's a big part of what I do in my speaking, emceeing, and coaching. The in-between quickly is an undergraduate in political science, public administration, and French, which doesn't make sense together, which is also part of my story. And then a master's, and I'm saying this, I don't intentionally do this, but we're talking about specialized knowledge, and we talk about how that education applies. And so a master's in program development, adult education, but I intentionally went in and said, I don't want to work with old people, I want to work with young people. And we kind of flipped that switch. And then I have a doctorate in change management, and it was also in the higher education world. And so I've taken that, but my intersection was always this intersection of education and corporate and organization. I didn't want to be the just classroom teacher. And so, or professor, that was never my goal. My goal was to do what we're doing here, to have interesting conversations where we are building knowledge, but perhaps in some really unconventional ways.
Love it. Wow, wow. Jeannie, so many different ways that we could go, and we're going to go.
And I'm good to go off road. I'm good. I've got my coffee. I'm here. I'm ready.
And I appreciate the stories even about your journey and even the wedding and everything like that too as well. We're gonna dive on into this commercial that looks at the 13 steps, but have so many questions around this specialized knowledge as we continue to move forward. Luis, I'm gonna bring you in. Luis, introduce us to this message about these 13 steps, this overview, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Peter. Absolutely. This video, guys, the first time I saw it, the first time I watched it, it was like a big eye-opening because we're gonna put every single of the 13 principles into like a magnifying lens. So we're gonna go dive into it, take notes, get your paper out, get your pen out, write stuff about this, whatever you gather on the 13 principles, and pay attention to specialized knowledge. This is a wonderful video.
Number 1 is desire. Napoleon Hill said that everything starts with a burning desire, a compelling reason for doing what it is we do. Step 2 is faith, having belief in our ability to attain that which we desire. Step 3 is what we call autosuggestion. Autosuggestion simply means being very intentional about the things that we are pouring into our thoughts, into our brains, and into our consciousness. Our brains, our minds will receive everything automatically, but we have to work extra hard to make sure that the positive things are what we are feeding ourselves, because those positive thoughts are going to turn into positive actions. Step number 4 is specialized knowledge. No one person knows everything, even about whatever their particular area of expertise might be. And the value of the Mastermind principle is using the specialized knowledge of other people. Step number 5 is imagination, the workshop of the mind. Everything starts with our imagination and our thoughts, the burning desire to transform those thoughts into our reality. In order to do that, we have to take a look at step 6, which is organized planning. That is how we crystallize our desire into action, organizing ourselves. Having the thought and not acting on the thought isn't going to get us anywhere. We have the thought, we go through the organized planning to transform that thought into action. Step number 7 is decision. What Napoleon Hill said is the mastery of procrastination. Napoleon Hill said that the antidote to procrastination is simply to make a decision and then move on that decision. Step 8 is persistence. We have to have a sustained effort which is induced by our faith in order to achieve our goals. One of Napoleon Hill's books I love, even the title, 3 Feet from Gold. Those people who became rich during the gold rush in the Wild Wild West days didn't do that because they were necessarily smarter or had better information than anyone else. It's because they stayed just a little bit longer. Sometimes people left when they were just literally 3 feet from gold. So hanging in there, being persistent, is step number 8. Step number 9, the power of the mastermind, the driving force. None of us can accomplish anything on our own. Everybody, I don't care who you are, from the most prominent person to the person who might be considered the lowest on the totem pole, everybody has someone who helped them get to where they are. And the power of the mastermind is being able to use those influences around us, use the thoughts, use the knowledge, use the exploration of other people to help us in achieving our goal. Step number 10, the mystery of sex transmutation. This title can be a little confusing, but essentially what the mystery of sex transmutation means is that we oftentimes in our society think of sex as being purely physical. It is absolutely physical, but what Napoleon Hill teaches us is that sex also has an emotional element, and that sex is the strongest of our desires. That if we can take our sexual energy, transform that into positive, creative influences, it can propel us to new heights. And so we spend quite a bit of time talking about the mystery of step 10, which is sex transmutation. Step number 11 is the subconscious mind, which Napoleon Hill tells us is the connecting leap between our human mind and the infinite intelligence, the source of all thought, the source of all creativity. Conscious mind, we spent some time talking about how we use that through the influence of autosuggestion and what we're feeding into our mind. Step number 12, which is the brain, the broadcasting and receiving station of thought. Final step number 13, the sixth sense, the door to the temple of wisdom. This is the final step through which infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily without any effort from or demands by the individual. The principle is the apex of the philosophy. It can be assimilated, understood, and applied only by first mastering the other 12 principles.
Alrighty, folks. So we're back here after those 13 steps. Galen, come on into this conversation with Genie.
Hey, well, I've got a bunch of a bunch of questions for Jeannie, but first I want to acknowledge everyone who's joining us live on YouTube. We got Velin Whitfield, who's always here. She's always one of the first ones to show up. Doretha Dennis, Carla Hill, Meta Wilson is here. Shannon Charlton, thank you for joining us. Tobo Adine, I hope I pronounced the name right. Thank you for being here. Paul Flowers. And got my good friend Sharice Taylor is here. Man, we got some powerhouse on the YouTube chat. Just listening in on YouTube. Please make sure you hit that thumbs up icon underneath the video so that the algorithm will pick us up and let YouTube know that there's something more that's going on here than the government antics. So, Jeannie, Jeannie, I do have a question for you. You know, I was listening to your story, and it just dawned on me that one of the things I talk about a lot is that we can all be amazing accidentally, right? We can all be successful accidentally. If I happen to run out of gas and say while I'm pumping gas, give me one of those lottery tickets, and I scratch it and I won a whole bunch of money. I was successful, but that was accidental. But when I was listening to your story, it really dawned on me that the key to being successful on purpose is not only having specialized knowledge, but owning your specialized knowledge, saying, this is my thing. Whether it's the education, whether it's the training, whether it's the observations, or just your perception on things. And you seem to own your specialized knowledge at a really, really young age. Talk a little bit about what it took for you to not only recognize your specialized knowledge, but own it and say, yeah, this is my thing.
That's so interesting, Galen, because thank you for the question and the comments. And I wonder sometimes, actually, to be transparent, do I own that specialized knowledge? I think, may I give you a code word to remind me about some things I won't forget? Will you give me the
A-
word package in a little bit?
Absolutely.
Um, Owning the specialized knowledge is interesting because I think that's probably an area where I don't own it enough, and it might be linked back to the success word that we talked about earlier. I am great at promoting others. I'm great at bringing out other people's genius. I am sometimes not as forthcoming. Excuse me, 1 second. Bosco's chiming in here, my dog. So but if I am owning my specialized knowledge, I think I probably could be a little more forthright in speaking about it. So do I know what I can do well? Am I confident in that? Yes. Do I tout it enough? And so I think owning it is part of it is actually crafting how to say it. Like, what is it that I do well? And some of the things that I do are odd and they're not like everybody else. And so my husband says I can get more out of somebody in 5 minutes at a Waffle House breakfast counter. He said, they just pour out their life stories to you. And I said, I know. I don't know what to call that. I don't know what to call that, but I think it is what I do in my coaching, in my speaking, in my emceeing. I'm reading the room. I always start everything that I do in the seat of the audience, whether it is a meeting, a one-on-one coaching, or speaking or emceeing before thousands. I like to sit in the audience. What are they feeling? What are they thinking? What do they skid into before they dropped their bags at the hotel and came in, and we're all expecting them to be as ready as we are. And so I think I can read people very well and try to pull out what it is that makes them genius and try to connect that. In this chapter of specialized knowledge, it talks about we don't have to know everything. Now, this was written pre-Google, right? So it says somebody else in the room probably knows what I don't know. But I think the quote from Henry Ford, somebody else is going to know that. Now we know we can get specialized knowledge from somewhere else. So what is it that is ours? And I love the prompt to remember to own it more. The package word is what I was going to bring up because I think I know it, I understand it. I may not be as good at packaging it, and I think that is what Anne and others in this book teach us on how to monetize that unusual genius that we have. And so I think the packaging is always the challenge for me, and that's where your subconscious can get in the way a bit,
Yeah.
or move us toward it.
Yeah, I love that distinction. And again, just reflecting back on my own journey, when I first left corporate America and started watching keynote speakers, I thought, well, I'll just do what they do, right? I'll just be another
Yes.
Les Brown. I'll just be another Dr. Willie Jolly. I'll be another Ann McNeil until I started watching them join NSA, and I started watching them, and I'm thinking, okay, I can't do that. No, that's the bar is way up here and I can't do that. But when I found my own thing, when I found
Mm.
like you, I love hearing from other people and getting underneath what they might be feeling. How do I help them get from behind their limiting beliefs? That's when I started finding my space. And it wasn't about being another someone else. It's about stepping into what I was put here on this planet to do. And I just really recognize that in your story. But the key is, do you own that like you just said, your specialty is getting other people to share their stories and weaving that
Hmm.
into the message that you're trying to deliver. So I just really appreciate that.
It's that intersection. I talk about intersections all the time. It's the intersections of things that seemingly may not make sense. It's that CEO that also is an artist, but she forgot, and so she brings those things together. I think that is part of owning it, is realizing we are different. You mentioned Les Brown. We just had Les Brown in our NSA, National Speakers Association Georgia meeting, and even my OGs came in and said, "How'd you get Les?" And we did a special thing where we were just 100 people in the room. We limited the amount. And they said, "Well, he's gonna Zoom in right now." He's in the room. And even there, you say, "Okay, how can I be like Les?" But less is more, because what he does is he teaches us how to be ourselves, how to be ourselves. And that is why he has, built the world of speakers around him, because he elevates those. But he owns his genius in mind. He owns his own knowledge. But that was it's just reminders how we learn from those other speakers, but we don't need to be those speakers.
Absolutely. Back to you, Dr. Peter.
Yeah, good stuff. I'm going to divert over to Louise. Louise got some questions for you there, Jeannie. Louise.
Hey, yes, this is fascinating. I love it.
Oh,
Um,
thanks. So fascinating to be with you guys.
thank you. Well, yeah, I'm getting because when this authority, when you become the authority,
Mhm.
right, because of your specialized knowledge, that boosts your self-confidence. It goes hand in hand. Those are the links, right? And you mentioned, Jeannie, about Think and Grow Rich. I am curious, and I'm sure a lot of people is curious as well. How did you stumble? How that
Mm.
book got into your life? I would
The
like
Think and
to.
Grow Rich book?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, I mentioned earlier, maybe to you before we while we were getting ready for today. Um, the first time I heard of it, my brother read it. And he read it at, I don't know, 10, 11, 12. I had no idea what it was. And I thought, this is interesting. This is really a vulnerable moment. But when he was reading it, I said, what is that? And I would say, and Ann and I have had long conversations about this over breakfast and in the car and on stage, hearing her of, is rich a good word? Growing up in my faith, is it okay to be rich? And I would say that was a struggle for me, of rich in friends, rich in knowledge, rich in all those things was okay. And I remember my brother saying to me one day, "It is not a sin to make money." Ann and I've talked about this. And and it's when I was deciding, well, my going into entrepreneurship was, it may not have been in the long-term planned out decision that I had originally planned to do, but or hadn't even thought about. And so I wasn't sure, do I need to go off that paycheck kind of thing? It wasn't about that. When I went into entrepreneurship, it wasn't about not working for the man or the woman, and it wasn't about the paycheck. It was a totally different thing. But I'll come back to your question. Um, it was probably when I got into NSA, when I joined Black NSA and they had the Mastermind. Well, they had it, and I said, "Okay, I don't know if y'all noticed, I'm not Black." And I said, "Can I come?" And I had a couple of people tell me no. And then I had John Register say, "Yeah, come on." And that's when I got to talk to Ann, and that's when Ann came and talked to us at NSA Georgia, and we got to have one-on-ones. And so that's when I joined that mastermind. So I would say it was a long time between when I first heard about that book and then when I decided that book was actually could be for me as well. So that's long in the tooth, kind of picking it up again. Well, I'd already been an entrepreneur for years and years and years, and yet it also was at a time where probably 5 years before I'd gotten connected with several groups who finally, in an authentic way, helped me understand how, yes, we can intersect faith and business. Because I had always I'd seen some people do it, but it felt inauthentic to me. And then I finally found my group. So I loved being a part of, I love being a part of Black NSA as well as this Think and Grow Rich Mastermind. And it's tough when you come in. It's tough because it is a very vulnerable spot to be in.
Yeah.
So there's a long time in between when I paid attention to this book.
I guess we all have some kind of similar story. Like we get into the book and we usually don't pay attention to the book the right way the first time. No, I love it. I love that because it's true. This book breaks for most people their beliefs on money, on rich. What is rich for
Mhm.
me is not the same. But yeah, it is true. Um, we the way we grow, or at least our generation, money is sin. Money is bad. If you grow with money, you're not gonna go to heaven, stuff like that. When this book taught me that God wants us to be rich in
Mhm.
all areas of life. So that's what I'm gathering. I love it. Thank you, Peter. I'm
Thank
passing the ball to
you.
you now.
Yeah, good stuff. Thank you, Louise. Jeannie, a word that just keeps rising to the surface for me as you keep talking is the word empathy.
Mm.
Empathy. Um, Perhaps empathy is your superpower.
Mm.
I'm hearing you say, I'm hearing
Thank
you.
you.
She's like, yeah, I guess. But I'm hearing you say so much how it's easy for you to understand the audience, understand what other people are, put yourself in their shoes, identify what, they're thinking. How did you sharpen that saw?
Mm. I do think that is a natural gift for me. I do believe that's a God-given gift. I think it also can be, I am an empath that
Mhm.
can work for me, and it can also work as anything that we're good at, right? It also, the other end of the continuum is, whew, that can also rip our hearts out sometimes when we need to be thinking a little more clearly. And so I'll go to two things you said. One, I think I am very empathetic and empathic. I feel people. And I had someone tell me early on, um, I'm not sure if they were saying it as a compliment or not, but I took it as one. I'm not sure they were, but they said, I've never met anyone who feels as deeply as you do for someone else. So I always have to watch that because I can, especially as a coach or as a, when you're having to give tough news to somebody, I have to make sure I'm feeling that, but also being um, firm or intentional about my words and not just going into their soft spot or my soft spot. I think that feeling that and putting myself in someone else's shoes, what I don't presume to do is that I can feel what that other person feels. There's no way that I can understand somebody's upbringing, background, etc., no more than they could understand mine.
Mhm.
I try to be very careful. I'm sure I don't always do it, but I try to be very careful to not presume something. But I also know that what I will say is, and I used this in a coaching session yesterday. I said, I want to be very careful that I'm not presuming what I think your boss thinks, but knowing the boss, I said, I feel like hearing what they're saying, I feel like some information was left out. I can't tell you if I know, but I have a strong intuition, gut, whatever you want to call it. And I'll say that in my career and in my life, I am learning to trust that intuition more because I know that is how I get downloads. I know that's how God is speaking to me or through me. I want to make sure I'm not ignoring that, but I also have to balance it with not just pouring out to have. It's a real fine line, but sympathy versus empathy, right? Of feeling what they're feeling enough so that I can help reflect something back. And I may not know the answer, but just be able to reflect it back because we all need that from our own coaches. So I would say that is one of my superpowers that allows me to do what I do. I can read an audience, I can read a room, I can help others to do that. But I also have to make sure I'm thinking about myself as well in that I have to go sometimes. Okay, Jeannie, don't wallow in that. Let's get up and pull up our own shoestrings and get going.
Yeah, that's good. If I could follow up that question, and I'm glad you even said that. I'm glad you said that, you're continuing to learn how to sharpen that skill, sharpen this superpower as you move forward. But also, some individuals in our society do such a great job of helping others, supporting others, doing
Hmm.
for others, but they don't do as great a job of taking care of themselves. I heard you allude to that.
Mm.
For those types of individuals who may be listening, what are some strategies that you're implementing that I heard you just mention, I'm learning to do that better for me. What are some things that you're doing that may benefit them because it is important because as I say, you can't do a good job of helping or taking care of others if you're not first taking care of yourself.
Exactly. And I think in where I was going with that with business. And so I think sometimes it is, I plan business days. They may get usurped sometimes by taking dad to the doctor or something, but I plan business days where they are just with me. It's interesting. I'm an extreme extrovert, as you might be able to tell a little bit, but and yet I love a solo retreat. I love, and if I can't even have that solo retreat, I love a solo hour where I say, I put down the phone. I am not even going to have the screen looking at me. And that seems so silly and simple. But if I say I can do 1 hour, yesterday when I hung up from a coaching call, I stopped for a minute and did something that I just suggested to her and did it for me and sat down and said, okay, I just gave that advice. Can I turn that on myself? And thought about, okay, what do I need to make sure that what is the information that maybe I forgot to give someone? I think they know it, and I forgot to give someone. And so I had an intentional call and gave 3 pieces of information before I let myself leave the chair because I think I'd left it out. I think I thought they knew what they knew, that they knew, all that stuff we do. And so I tried to give myself my own medicine, but you do have to stop and really think about it. You have to think about it. So that for me, that's what I do in little bite-sized nuggets or that 2-day solo retreat.
I'm going to bring Galen in because Galen says to me regularly, Peter, don't be asking me those coaching questions that I'm asking you.
Oh, my husband says, yeah, don't be throwing that stuff at me. I'll call malpractice. And that's what that's our joke in our house. He said, I'm calling malpractice on that. Don't you teach this for a living? Yeah.
Hey, as I started at the beginning of today's conversation, I want to go back to the title of this principle. It's
Mm,
specialized knowledge, experiences, and observations. And as I heard you talk about intuition, which is something that I'm getting more and more into, that really sounds like intuition, experiences, and observations, and owning that. What did it take for you to embrace your intuition? Because very often,
mm,
especially when you start in any field, you want to hang on to, this is what the book says, this is what the research paper says, this is what this other guru talks about, right? Head
mm.
knowledge. But embracing your own experiences, embracing your own perspective as knowledge takes some courage. Talk a little bit about the courage that it took for you to embrace your own intuition.
Oh, thank you for the question. I love it because I know, and I know in my heart of hearts, that intuition is one of my biggest superpowers. What I did not know is how I need to make sure that I'm trusting that. And when I say intuition, that knot in my stomach, that beating in my heart, I always believe I cannot disconnect that from divine intervention. For me, that's how I always see it and feel it. Where I think I dropped the ball is I might have been getting that message, but I wasn't strong enough to say, nope, I know that. So I would say it is in recent years. I would say that even in as long as I've been doing entrepreneurship, coaching, speaking, etc., um, I had to really trust that sometimes and actually get the words out. So let's say I'm speaking to an executive board, a C-suite group, a leadership team, or somebody who is just as intimidating as heck, right? For me to actually say it. And I learned that from working with CEOs, where I had to literally say what I thought and literally bite my tongue so that I wouldn't talk myself out of it or talk away what the statement I just made. And I remember vividly, three things come to mind when you said that. One was I was meeting with CEO. This was probably 20 years ago, probably one of my first big girl meetings, where I had been it, but I was in a meeting with the CEO of an international company, and I had to tell him something that he did not want to hear. And I remember standing outside his door and saying, okay, Jeannie, you could do these 3 points and stop talking. I said that to myself almost audibly, standing outside his door. I went in, we had that message. What I was giving him made him furious. And then I had to walk into my sponsor, the next door, who's the CFO, and tell him what I just did. And I gave this information. He did not care for it. And on the way to the airport, my Think and Grow Rich reading brother, I called him and I said, hey, I might have just messed up. And he said, it's not something I'll share on this show, but he gave me a term that said, you chilled him. I'll say it that way. And I said, I what? And he said, he knows, but he did not want to admit. And now I wish I had known what I knew 2 weeks later. I was just saying how this person, I was giving him some feedback on someone in his organization that I thought was was sabotaging a project. I did not know he was embezzling. Had I, y'all be on my show right now, because I would have been, if I could pull that stuff out, it would have been great, right? I did not know. And so, but I just knew there was something going on that didn't work. So that's one story where I actually used my intuition. It didn't play well for my company because that went away. In fact, they fired all consultants, not just us. They fired all consultants. That was their answer. So, and I love the company to this day, and it's a great company, but that was an interesting time where I had to really step up. There's been some times where I could also tell you 3 different times I didn't say it and wish I had. So I think that is trusting that intuition, and it's having trust in what that message is and myself. And that's that subconscious piece that comes all through this book that we're going, wow, other people are dealing with this too. It is a thing. I've got 2 other stories, but I'll stop because they may weave in somewhere else.
Yeah,
That came to mind when you asked that.
Well, I'll tell you something else that came to mind when I was listening to you, and I'll turn this over to Luis. Is you brought in getting spiritual downloads, and one of the things when I read the Bible, it talked about how you can trouble the Holy Spirit. And one of the ways that you can trouble the Holy Spirit is if it continues to give you advice and suggestions and nudging, and you just ignore it.
And we ignore it.
It's like just
Hello.
think about if you had a friend and you constantly give your friend advice on how to do things, and they constantly ignore you and they don't acknowledge you, and they just continue to do something totally opposite. Eventually you're going to stop giving the advice. You might not stop being their friend, but you're going to stop giving the advice. And that the same thing can happen with this specialized knowledge, especially as it pertains to your insights, your experiences, and your observations. And we're calling that intuition. If you stop acting on or refuse to act on your intuition, eventually your intuition is going to weaken, and you're not going to have it. So we have to act on it.
And I think sometimes that intuition, where I've learned probably in the past, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, where I've learned the most about that is when I know my intuition's right and I need to not act because it cannot have an impact, or it is being detrimental to me to continue that conversation, that relationship, whatever that is. And, that's when my husband calls malpractice. He goes, haven't we talked about this? So it's good to have, those people who you do trust in your lives to keep putting that message in your ear. And it's just, cobbler's children have no shoes. Sometimes we have to be reminded.
Absolutely. Luis, what's going on, man?
What's going on? A lot of things going on right now with the conversation. It's fantastic. Uh,
Thank you.
no, it's what I'm gathering right now, what comes to my mind is this specialized knowledge, right? Napoleon says that successful men, obviously men, women,
Sure.
in all callings never stop acquiring specialized knowledge. One of the things that I've learned is obviously I don't have to be a master of everything, right? However, I know a lot of people, they love to be a seven in everything and know a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and always, right, inputting information and this, that. But I'd rather to be a 10 in one or two or three things, right? And
Hmm.
have that person that people will seek for information or help, right? How can we help? What is, I would love for you to share with the audience. What is that thing that you bring to the table that you feel, you know, you are the authority that when they need help with, this is me. I can help you to take your business, your life, your economy to a different place.
Uh, in just common words, I say that I work in leadership communication and customer service. I would say that the thing that I am the most, I stumble even saying the word authority right on is, and I'm saying this because I had some strategic conversations even this week with some longtime mentors, some of them former clients that are mentors, um, and we talked about the common word customer service. I
Mm,
like to flip it. I've always used it as serving people, serving customers. I like the active verb as opposed to service. Customer service sounds like something in the back of the store where it used to hang above the bathrooms. Who wants to go there? So, but serving others, which also aligns with everything I do. Gracious hospitality is one of my three core values in life and in business. I can't disconnect them. Um, and so serving others. So I would say my authority comes from how to use the leadership principles and the communication um, methods for serving others. So customer service is what I feel like is one of my sweet spots. And I do that by connecting the genius of others. So I talk a lot about intersections. One of my main things that I work with is how contradictory constructs become complementary concepts. It's hard to
mm,
say three times fast. I don't expect you to. But things that don't make sense together can become the complementary concept. The person comes in, we'll just take something very basic. I love to work in the hospitality industry, hotels, travel, even chambers of commerce, all of those where we're trying to do something that changes an entire group of people. But I'm about experiences. You read that in my intro. We talk about it here. How do we create experiences that could take that contradictory thing that there's no way what they want can be fixed with what we have? But there
mm.
is something complementary that we do have. So what do we have? If your room's not ready, I arrived in India at 2 in the morning when I first arrived in India, my first time ever. I went solo. It's a whole nother story. I don't know why, but I went by myself to India. I remember being in the hotel at 2 in the morning and saying, I am alone in India. That's what I kept saying. I'm walking through. I'm alone in India. What was I thinking? I get to my hotel and they said, "Hello, ma'am." They had the customer service. They were so beautifully, had the beautiful British toned language. "Hello, ma'am. Your room's not quite ready." Now I thought maybe I had my time zones wrong. I'm like, it is 2 in the morning here, right? I know what time it is in my house, but 2 in the morning here. And they said, "Yes, ma'am." And I said, "Your new room's not quite ready. It'll probably be a couple of hours." I have been flying for 18. I said, but she was so lovely and said, "But our coffee shop is open." Coffee is not really what I wanted at that time, but you can take something that's contradictory and give me an upgrade in my room and all of those things. You can make it happen and to make it a complementary concept. Now, that's just the one that came to mind. I could give a million customer service options, but how do we usually say no. instead of figuring out how to say what's yet best for that client. And it might have been, and she had just asked a few questions about what I'd like. Would you like to go out? Would you like to do? So I think asking questions is my other major superpower. I think we have to have all the answers. The thing when I'm working with people in customer service is they get nervous because they think they have to have the answers. You do not have to have any. Well, you need some answers, but you need to know how to ask good questions. When we ask good questions, we find out what's most important to you. So if I were asking you, Louise, what you needed the most, when you answer me, I can discern what is your top priority. And then those other 2, 3 things you're complaining about are going to fall away because I have reached your top priority. But I can't do that until I know what that is. So I would say that asking questions. I have lots of friends that say, "Oh, don't get with Dr. Genie unless you want to answer some questions." And I ask a lot of questions because that's how we get to what's important to someone else. That's the main crux of customer service, of serving customers well.
Wonderful, wonderful. That was really, really good. And I
Thank you.
love that because yes, a good coach asks the right questions always, right? The answers are in within us. Well, we have some questions from the audience on
I
YouTube.
see that.
Yes, so Cherie says, my question to Dr. Snyder is, how do you best utilize collaboration and the wisdom of others in deepening your knowledge?
I listen a lot and I ask questions. I know that sounds a bit of a broken record, but I ask a lot of questions. I want to learn from others. And so when I'm teaching students or C-suite, I always say have 2 or 3 of your questions in your back pocket because what is it that you want to know? So I'm asking questions. In my case, I'm always asking people about their genius. Now, I might not say, what's your genius? People can't really answer that. But I'll say, what do you love the most? And then I'll ask somebody about their job. What do you love, 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 love the most about your job? And I've asked this of clients, and I've asked this of the man who was about to do spinal surgery on my husband. And I said, do you love what you do? And this highly acclaimed, highly sought after brain and spinal surgeon said, he stopped. He'd been telling us all the things, and then he stopped and he said, I love what I do. Brains and backs. I love what I do. And it caught him off guard, and I knew we had something. Now, if I'd said, what's your genius? He probably would have given me his resume. But now the question that I was prompted to ask by another neurosurgeon was, you need to know if he's a rock star. So I couldn't ask him, are you a rock star? When you asked me about authority, I couldn't ask, well, my authority is blah, blah, blah. Some people are good at that. That's not my lane. I couldn't ask him if he's a rock star, but I could ask him that. And after I asked him a few more questions, I said, so you're a rock star in this? And he went, I wouldn't call myself that, but yes. So we can get to it. We just have to ask different questions. And so I think that is the asking questions is, if I don't know what else to do, I ask questions. And that would answer, Sharice, thank you for the question. And I think you're going to find out not only about the wisdom of others, but then you're going to find out those intersections. I know I keep bringing it up, but those unusual, unexpected intersections of how we might work together on something, collaborate on something. And collaboration is a giant word for me. You're better when if you're working with another collaborative spirit. I'll say it that way. All collaborations are not true collaborations. Learn those lessons too.
Yeah, no, that was fantastic. Peter, going back to you.
Yeah, good stuff. We got to get ready to land the plane there, folks. But we do have a question from Victoria there, Genie. Victoria says, how do you protect or recharge your energy after strong intuitive experiences? What does that mean for you there?
That's a good question, Victoria. Thank you. And it's a nice reminder because it does, my name, it really is Genie, like in the bottle, Genie. And when you're doing your magic, you get exhausted. And I think some of the things that we as speakers have to talk about this a lot. If I am speaking or emceeing, it takes an extraordinary amount of energy because you're on. You're constantly looking for things. And sometimes that doesn't look as hard as it is, right? And so off the stage, off the out of the retreat, especially after a retreat, because you've been helping other people dig, leading a genius retreat. When I lead that, I'm fired up and I'm energized. And so I have to actually remember to take some of my own medicine and go away for a little bit. My recharge is, it seems backwards, and people roll their eyes at me. My favorite thing I love in life is travel. And I might have just traveled to wherever I just did the thing, right? I just was on the West Coast. And what I've learned to do is rather than go straight into the next work thing when I can, it doesn't always work. I'll take a day wherever I am. It doesn't matter if I am in a Hampton Inn in South Georgia or a luxury hotel somewhere on the West Coast. It doesn't matter. But take a little while. And my favorite place to go is take myself to dinner by myself so that I can meet other people. And I typically sit at the bar or the chef station so that I can have that conversation with somebody. Not only does it recharge me, so I'm kind of by myself and I'm kind of with others, and it recharges. So that's my favorite way to do that. And I protect my energy because I'm not pouring into that person. They're pouring into me.
Good stuff there, Jeannie. Wow, great stuff. Yeah, let's get ready to land this plane. I think we're close to our time. I'm gonna go around the room. I'm gonna start off with Galen. Galen, can you share some aha moments from our conversation with Jeannie today? And then how do we stay in touch with Galen?
Yeah, so one of the biggest ahas I got is that there's a difference between a Hampton Inn in South Georgia and a luxury hotel in another country.
Mm-hmm.
So there's,
And I like
no,
both of them. I can
hey,
have
but
fun
it's
at both.
different. It's different. It's
It
different though.
is. It is.
The biggest thing that I got is just this whole idea of owning your genius.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be something that someone else shares. It doesn't have to be something that someone else understands, but you have to
True.
own this thing that is unique to you. And as I say to my clients, what is that thing that if you don't do the way that only you can do it, it might leave a hole in the universe?
Mm-hmm.
That might come in a couple different packages. So I just really appreciate that reminder, Jeannie, as well as your energy. My name is Galen Bingham. I'm the leadership
Thank
strategist. You can
you.
find me all over the place. LinkedIn, Instagram, but the easiest, the most fun way to get a hold of me is to go to my website, killglobalcoaching.com or galenbingham.com, and subscribe. Check out my podcast, Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership. We talk to leaders all over the world about the whiskeys they drink, the music they listen to, and what they think it really takes to be an effective leader. A double dog dare you to try us at least once. Guarantee you that you will get something that's going to allow you to take at least one step towards who you are supposed to be. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Dr. Peter, back to you.
Absolutely. Luis, I want to pull you in, sir. Tell us about some of your ahas and how do we stay in touch with Luis?
Thank you. The questions,
Hmm.
asking questions, going back to basics. I- Doing basics will never hurt anyone, right? Going back to our basics. No, that was very good, Jeannie. And
Thank you.
no, I mean seriously, that's it. Like going for the questions and disrupt, right? That's another word that I use. You use the terminology of cross
Intersections. Mm-hmm.
intersections.
Mm-hmm.
I call it interrupting patterns, like, which
Yes. Mm-hmm.
could be basically, I find it common or alike. But yeah, I love it. You brought me back to, yes, that's the formula, that's the step, that's how we get that. And you guys can find me in all platforms as well, as or in my website, luisjimenezcoaching.com, both in English and Spanish. So we can help people in both languages. Thank you, Peter.
Good
Let's
stuff,
land
Luis.
it.
Good stuff. I want to tell a little bit about my ahas. And, you know, I was appreciative, Jeannie, that you were so transparent. And even talking
Thank
about
you.
your superpowers, but talking about the need to be able to recharge. And I think that's a good reminder for all of us who are somewhat in service industries where we're always giving, 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 giving. And we have to pay attention to our rest, pay attention to how we recharge, pay attention to taking care of ourselves. And it's just always a good reminder for even myself, for sure. One of the ways that I also recharge, and you also mentioned this, Jeannie, how we need that individual in our life or individuals who will be candid with us, be very straightforward and direct. I have a client who I'm just recently was extremely straightforward and direct, as you alluded to there, Jeannie. But I know that this annual meeting that we have with the Think and Grow Rich Mastermind that we have every year is one way that I pull in individuals to call me on myself, to challenge me to higher heights. And it takes place every year in January, usually in Boca Raton. And yes, we will be at the Embassy Suites in Boca Raton on January 2nd or 3rd and 3rd of 2026. This is a great opportunity for those of you who are listening and watching to reset your life in various areas, not just business, career, but in so many other areas to include your health, your retirement, your family, right? And we all need that pause to be able to do so on a regular basis. And this is just one example of how we can go about doing so. Hey folks, my name is Dr. Peter A. James. I'm the high performance coach. You can find me at shiftyourmindset.com. Also on LinkedIn. Please don't hesitate to connect. Let's dive on in and chat on how you could take your life, business, and career to that next level. All right there, Jeannie. So, we're going to leave room for you to talk about how we stay in touch with you, how we can stay connected with Genie as we move forward. Because, there might be someone out there who needs Genie in their life or in their business to be able to understand themselves and what they do even better. How do we do that, Genie?
Thank you so much, Peter. And thank you all. Thank you, Louise, Peter, and Galen, and Anne, of course, for inviting me on here. And I loved your questions. That's my favorite place to be, is to get to have a conversation that is so genuine. Thank you. And I'd love to stay connected. That's my biggest word. And the first, lane in my genius model is staying connected. And so you can find me at geniesnyder.com. That's our website. Also on LinkedIn. And I think there's going to be links uh, in the other information. This is me running down the hall getting ready for you. So that is part of our website. I am a speaker, MC, and executive coach, and love to work with people either one-on-one with your company or at a Genius retreat. Our conferences, when I'm speaking or MCing, can be small to large audiences, but it has to be folks that really want to connect, and I help them do what they do best. So that is where you can find me. So LinkedIn, also on Facebook, Instagram, my link tree is here, and it gives you all the things to stay connected with me. I'm also going to offer something. We're going to be rolling out some new coaching in just a couple of weeks. And if you are interested in that, if you will either message me on LinkedIn or email me directly from that link tree, and you need to just say somewhere in that subject line, I love Anne. I love Anne. And if you say I love Anne, you will get a special price.
Good stuff there. I put it in the chat for
Thank you
everyone
so
in
much.
the YouTube world there, folks. Don't hesitate to dive on in and say, I love Anne McNeil. I love Anne, because we all love Anne. Hey, real caveat. I was just told that the dates for the annual meeting in 2026 have been shifted from January 2nd and 3rd to January
Probably
9th
9th
and
and
10th.
10th.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. January 9th and 10th. So we'll make sure that we update that and provide that for you in upcoming shows. Jeannie, thank you so much for being a phenomenal guest today. Truly
Thank
appreciate it.
you so much for being a phenomenal host and for the invitation. And thank you, Anne McNeil, one of my favorite humans in the universe. And now I've added 3 more humans to that list. So thank you so much for getting to work with you today.
Absolutely. And on
Enjoy,
behalf of
especially on Easter weekend.
on Easter weekend, yes, and on
Yeah.
behalf of
It's a
Louise and
good Saturday.
it is a great Saturday, Holy Saturday for sure. On behalf of Louise
Mhm.
and Galen, I want to thank you and thank all of you who have been watching today. Hey, and we're going to ask you, please come back next week, same time, same channel. And in the meantime, please continue to think and grow rich. Take care.